How's it going, Sean?
Living the dream.
Living the
Yeah.
dream.
This is a kind of an auspicious day, like a great day. A day when two of us are doing something we've both wanted to do for a long time. Probably would have done it independently, but through circumstances of work, travel, and play, we've ended up in the same place at the same time. And I think it's kind of amazing. It's really exciting to have this chance to do what it is we're going to talk to you about today. Today, we're going to start a podcast, which is really exciting. David and I have known each other for a long time. We worked at different schools in the past, both worked in the same area, trying to create change in schools. And, luckily, it's come to be that we both work at the same school. We work in the same office. We see each other every day. And we just have really similar ideas about what makes purposeful change in an organization. What are the things that maybe block or inhibit sort of good change? And then, and in that regard, we get frustrated about the same things, but we also see opportunities in the same way. And that's really what I'm excited to be able to talk about is the things that we experience that other people might experience as well, and to be able to just share them in a wider audience. Those things that we think work when you're trying to make things better, and those things to maybe avoid or to maybe not get frustrated by along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're both content creators, and we are always blown away by the content that people create outside of education. And so I'm sure you have friends where you're constantly sharing IG Reels with each other and TikToks. And we do the same thing. And a lot of the topics are what Sean has been talking about. So we decided this would be a great space where we can share those really cool clips, share the cool things that are happening outside of just our school, our work, and connect it to our goals of bringing change and moving education forward. But I do want to talk about kind of how we came together. I was told by a friend, a mutual friend of ours, Chris Smith, that Sean was coming to our school, and I was super excited because that I've seen him on Twitter and all the social media. But what was interesting was that Chris was not the only person who mentioned Sean. A whole bunch of people came up to me and said, "Oh, look, you're really going to like Sean. You guys are going to just hit it off, and you're going to collaborate and create all these cool projects." You know, the first time when I heard it from Chris, I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." But hearing it from everybody else, it felt a bit on my side. I didn't tell Sean this. I felt a bit overwhelmed, and it put a lot of pressure of like, oh well, what if we don't click? And because we're in the same team, so. But surprisingly, I clicked with Sean immediately. And it's been exactly what everyone said it was going to be, and actually much more. We not only have similar views, but also similar passions as well, which is cool.
Yeah. And we both have young families, and we're excited to be able to kind of work on these things for a purpose, and that's not only so that we have like a really enriching place to work, but also for our kids, like thinking about what sort of experience do we want them to have, both personally, like in the things we can do with them, but also hopefully in the school setting, in the school that we work at, and wider schools as well. And so, yeah, like David said, I think I mentioned before that I knew of David for a long time, and he has this amazing presence on YouTube, doing all these crazy things. And so I think we both had the same thing, is that kind of hesitancy before meeting someone that everyone tells you to get along with, and then it works so well that we see opportunities in similar areas. We also kind of get frustrated by the same mechanism sometimes, and it's been awesome to have a think partner to really talk about positive ways that we might be able to improve things, not just change things. I think I used the word change a lot earlier, and I kind of want to reiterate that like we're not into just change for change's sake, but really looking at systems and thinking like where are the parts of the system that could be improved so that they work better, and sometimes that might be like taking things away. But either way, it's been a really great journey so far, and we're really excited to start the podcast and to be able to. I think it's a bit cathartic for us to be able to talk it out loud, and hopefully we'll get some really great feedback from people who listen to get sort of combine their ideas into our ideas so that we can have a bigger impact along the way.
And I'm super excited to talk about just the name of our podcast, currently being called Iceberg Mountain.
Because it sounds a bit like it doesn't make any sense, although it really does at its heart. That probably is not the right thing to say. That doesn't make any sense. When I expressed to my wife we were going to call it Iceberg Mountain, she was a bit dubious, but I love that for David and I it has a really deep personal meaning. And I hope for you as a listener it will too. The byline for the Iceberg Mountain is be the iceberg, climb your mountain.
Because there's two pieces of content that we'll be sharing, and it'll pretty much explain everything. Mm-hmm. All right, I think we're ready to watch the first video, which is about the iceberg.
Listen to anyone, because in this new world, no one knows anything.
Hi, haters.
The haters, the doubters are all drinking champagne in the top deck of the Titanic, and we are the iceberg.
I'm a huge Casey Neistat fan. I've been watching his vlogs for a very long time, and he's influenced me in a lot of ways, mostly really thinking about storytelling, the message or the lesson that is underlining the content that I create.
Yeah, I might chime into that a little bit. I think Casey also has a section in here about advice, like terrible advice.
To the haters, the doubters, my 7th grade vice principal. To everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't. This video's for you. Keep your head down, follow the rules, do as you're told, play it safe. Wait your turn, ask permission, learn to compromise. This is terrible advice.
I've known Casey Neistat, but really got into him more since I've talked to David. The thing about Casey Neistat is that he worked in film and then he chose to go to YouTube and move that way because it was an opportunity, it made sense, and he has a larger voice in this different realm that people don't always give as much credit to as they possibly could. And I like that idea of challenging the status quo and saying, like, it's not all about compromising all the time. It's not always about staying in line. It's not always about, following the rules. Sometimes, although you don't want to be that person who just goes and breaks the rules for no reason, sometimes there are rules that you can challenge, and sometimes there are situations where you have to stop and say, like, why are we doing this over and over again? And so the idea of being the iceberg is, as much as it sounds kind of dramatic in terms of like taking down the Titanic, it's really more about like, for me anyway, that idea of like standing up and like standing in front of the machine and saying, hey, what are we doing? And trying to be that one of those voices that really stands up and has a reasonable, calculated argument to say, this is why maybe this or this doesn't work particularly well, and this is how we could possibly do it better. It doesn't always end up in the Titanic sinking, but I think like being that challenge maker, that person that will respectfully like stand up and like call out things that could be improved or worked upon, I think is a really important thing that we're not always encouraged to do, is probably what I want to say.
And yeah, that clip about staying in line, doing what you're told, he's saying it from a perspective of he didn't go to school for videography. I think because of that perspective, he did things in his own way, and that's what helped him succeed. And I think that's what education sometimes needs as well.
I wonder if in some ways, like I was starting to think about like, what maybe one of the things we hope to do is to like highlight some of the icebergs we see coming down the path.
We're using iceberg in the name because we want people, like-minded people, want to somewhat disrupt education, because there's specific places for that.
And there's also, I think, an element there of there's lots of education material on YouTube that's about, the day-to-day grind and like, lesson planning and how you might use digital tools and things like that. And those things have a place in education for sure, but we feel that there's a lot of space particularly in the podcast and YouTube world, where there's not a lot of people who are actively trying to go out there and look really critically at like what are people doing in education that is really positive, and what are some things that are different that can make a huge difference for individual children along the way. And so we really want to try and find those areas and highlight them and like build them up and see where structures can be put in place to help implement those sort of things so that we can improve, like we said, not just education for the children we teach right now, but like for our children and for other people's children along the way.
Should we talk about the mountain?
Yeah, let's talk about the mountain. Dude, I love the mountain. So the mountain came from this clip.
Something that worked for me was imagining that where I wanted to be, which was an author, primarily of fiction, making good books, making good comics, imagining that was a mountain, a distant mountain, my goal. And I knew that as long as I kept walking towards the mountain, I'd be all right. And when I truly was not sure what to do, I could stop and think about whether it was taking me towards or away from the mountain.
I think of all the clips that David and I have sent it to each other, and we've sent a lot of clips to each other. It's the one that we've probably talked the most about. And it really, that idea of thinking to yourself, like having that distant peak in your mind's eye to realign yourself every time you make a decision, you know, if like, am I going to do this training? What does it take me towards my mountain? I think it's so powerful, and it really helps you to take into perspective what you're doing on the day to day. And sometimes it helps you get through things that you don't necessarily want to do because you just say, okay, well, this is part of the path, and I need to get through it and get to the other end. And so for me, it's been really inspiring to like actually stop and think, what do I want in the longer term? And you know, we kind of hope that maybe some other people will take that on board while we're doing this podcast as well.
Yeah, and just the concept of a mountain, I'm thinking like a huge mountain, like Mount Everest type of thing. So it kind of forces you to think really big. And that's been really powerful. And also just that idea of a journey. If I was in my 20s right now and I was seeing the stuff that I'm seeing on social media, I would feel a bit overwhelmed because you just see people's mountains, but it just doesn't show the journey. You take one step at a time.
I think too, another aspect of that journey to the mountain that really appeals to me is that things are going to change along the way. And I think we both realize as we start this kind of journey with podcasting that, you know, we started today, and we started today because otherwise we're going to put it off for, you know, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month until we're completely ready. But, you know, maybe completely ready never happens. And so today, David said, let's go, let's go and record. So we grabbed the cameras and we came here and we're getting started. And we know that this journey we know roughly where we want to go, but we also know that like we're probably going to take a bit of a meandering path. Ultimately, we're driving towards this goal of like self-improvement and improvement of like organizations and processes and things like that, and helping other people as well.
I don't know if this is related, but also I thought I had specific mountains when I was younger, and some of those mountains I've actually summited and got to the top. What it's helped me realize is your mountain might change as well as you get older or more experience. And I'm super excited to share today my mountain. It's kind of difficult to say it out loud because now everyone will know. I kind of wanted to keep it a secret just to give less pressure to myself. But I feel like pressure is good. I should be striving towards this mountain. And it's to design a school in the future, design from the ground up a school where it is based on what I feel are essential to high quality education, essential to helping students be prepared for their future.
And that's a lofty mountain for sure. And I think like I would work on your mountain any day. But, you know, for me, I have had difficulty stepping back far enough, I think, sometimes to think about my mountain. And where I'm at right now, and I'm sure this will change over time, is I think fundamentally for me, what I'd love is to have like creative freedom. And what that looks like to me personally at the moment, my wife and I, well, my wife is an artist, she's a visual artist. And then I love making things, whether it's woodwork or digital manufacturing, kind of laser cutting, things like that. I would love to be in a position where, as a job, or through gaining some sort of financial independence, that I'll be able to set aside time for making and for sharing making. And I often think about having the time and space to have a workshop where I can bring my son and teach him like really simple basic things around woodwork and things like that, so that as he gets older he can have a creative confidence in himself that he can make things. And I would love in time to be able to share that more broadly. And I think, in my previous job, I ran a maker space in elementary school, and that was one of the most empowering things I've ever done. So maybe it will look like that, like running some sort of maker space, or maybe it's just a personal thing that my wife and I try to create ourselves. But I think I'm going to keep it more broad for myself, as really trying to create some sort of creative freedom for me and my family.
So yeah, this has been an awesome experience, just because this is our pilot and this is our first time doing the podcast episode. I feel like this is going to be a start to a long journey. We would like to end by asking our audience, do you feel like you're part of that Iceberg community where you want to disrupt education? And also, we would love to hear, what is your mountain? What is your current mountain? All right, so we'll see you on the next one. Be the Iceberg.
And climb your mountain.